Hey everyone, Ibra here with hardwarecanucks, and as you can see in front of me, I have a bunch of GPUs, more specifically custom RX 5700 XT and 5700 GPUs. We have the super hyped Power Color Red Devil 5700 XT GPU. This thing goes for $450, which is the limited edition, but you can pick up the regular one for $440, and the difference is you're going to be getting some accessories, including an RGB mouse mat, which is it's up to you. If you need that RGB mouse mat specifically from this company, that's an option. Then we have the ROG Strix 5700 XT OC. This is the most expensive 5700 XT among the bunch because it retails for $460. And then we have the MSI Evoke OC 5700 XT. This is a really interesting looking graphics card. It retails for $430. Now let's move on to the 5700 side. So we have the Asus TUF Gaming X3 5700. This is an overclock GPU and it goes for $380. And then we have the Sapphire Pulse RX 5700. This goes for $360. In fact, availability for all of these GPUs are kind of all over the place. Some of them are available in some regions, some of them it's kind of difficult to find. Now, I know that I'm missing a lot of other custom board partner cards from Gigabyte and XFX, but we are working with what we have over here. So we're definitely going to talk about performance, thermals, acoustic, and of course, find an all-rounder for from this whole comparison. So why don't we get started? But first, a quick message from our sponsor. The LickTech 2 360 AIO cooler from Enermax now comes in this gorgeous white finish to give your PC a bit of character. The EF1 pump delivers superior cooling performance, it's both Intel and AMD socket compatible, and it features RGB lighting. Learn more about it down below. Alright, so let's start off with the physical aspects of this GPU, kicking things off with the Power Color 5700 XT. This thing is built like a tank. I mean, it's almost the same size, if not bigger than my Aorus RTX 2080 Ti, which I find to be pretty hilarious. It features a triple 90mm fan design with each of them rocking 2 ball bearings that's supposed to increase longevity. It also has the 0 dB feature where the fan stops spinning when temps are below 60 C. You also get a metal backplate with the Power Color logo that's LED lit, which looks cool. It's also one of the longest GPUs from this batch, coming at around 11.8 inches, and that's due to the high density heatsink that features 5 heat pipes. You might also notice that the cooler itself is longer than the PCB, which sadly places the dual 8-pin power connectors at an odd location for routing cables, unless if you decide to connect them from the bottom inside a case. Speaking of a case, I would highly recommend checking compatibility, especially if you plan on installing this inside an MATX form factor. Now this card has 2 modes, OC and Silent. Each of them have a power target of 220 watts and 180 watts respectively, and you can switch between these modes using the BIOS switch located on the side of the card. The problem is that you have to uninstall Radeon drivers first, turn off the PC, flip the switch, boot into Windows, and then reinstall AMD drivers for silent mode to take effect if you want to run this card in silent mode. Although, I mean, I don't know why would you do it because it is an overkill graphics card in the first place, but that is something to keep note of. The I/O remains the same compared to the reference card, and you get fancy RGB lightings around the edge. They haven't overly done RGB with this GPU, and I appreciate that. Moving on, we have the ROG Strix 5700 XT. This is actually a bit heavier than the Power Color card, but it still features the same length and thickness. The design is basically the same as any other Strix graphics cards. You still get the same triple fan layout with the 0 dB technology. It also comes with a brushed metal backplate and the ROG logo that's LED lit, as well as RGB. The heatsink on this thing is once again ginormous. It extends all the way to the end, and interestingly enough, the dual 8-pin power connectors are located at the right spot for easier cable management. This is of course thanks to the extended PCB. The front shroud has a few subtle RGB strips, which is the typical ROG theme that they all go for. The I/O is a copy and paste from the reference card, and for $460, you are getting what you're paying for. I mean, Asus doesn't cut any corners with this GPU. It still looks beefier and heavier like the Power Color graphics card, so I'm curious to see how it compares to the rest of the GPUs. And just like the Power Color GPU, this Asus card has 2 BIOSes, which is performance and silent. So if you need to flip between those two switches, you have to go through the same process like I mentioned earlier. Next up, we have the MSI Evoke OC 5700 XT. This GPU looks really cool with this interesting champagne or gold color design, if you want to call it that way. They've cut down on a lot of the gamery elements that you typically get with an MSI GPU. It's clean and simple, and I like MSI's approach here. Thankfully, it's not as long as the PowerColor and Strix models, but it's just as thick as those GPUs. So if you plan on installing this in a compact case, make sure you have proper clearance to accommodate one. The entire shroud is made out of metal, except for the plastic grille at the back for airflow. You still get a metal backplate that looks gorgeous. Interestingly enough, there are 0 signs of RGB on the Evoke, and I think that's appropriate. RGB and gold, they really won't go well together, guys. MSI uses a dual fan design with the zero frozer feature that stops spinning the fans under idle scenarios. As for the heatsink, it looks pretty robust. However, Steve from Gamers Nexus discovered something really interesting when he tore apart this GPU. So basically, MSI decided to cheap out on thermal pads covering the entire memory and VRMs, which eventually led to higher temperatures for those modules. The core temps were fine for my testing, but it's really an odd cost-cutting factor from MSI for this GPU. And if you're interested in his complete teardown process and some of his findings, I'll make sure to leave a link to that video in the description down below. The I/O remains the same as the others, and this GPU uses a 6+8-pin power connector layout. And unlike the PowerColor and Strix models, the Evoke does not come with any modes or switches. It's simply a plug-and-play solution. So that wraps up the 5700 XT models. Now let's quickly take a look at the 5700s. Starting with the Sapphire Pulse, there's nothing really special here with the design. It features a dual fan layout, and underneath that lies their robust cooling solution that's packed with specific VRM and memory cooling modules. There is not a lot of RGB going on over here. You get a simple Sapphire logo on the edge that's LED lit. One of the cool features of this GPU is that the user can easily replace the fans by simply removing this one screw located underneath the blades, and it's connected to the rest of the frame by pins, which is pretty neat, especially if you plan on cleaning the heatsink later on. It's very unique in my opinion. As for the rest of the card, you get a metal backplate, a 6+8-pin power connector layout. I/O remains the same here, and there is a BIOS switch that switches between performance and silent mode, though keep in mind that the process is pretty much identical to what I just mentioned earlier with the PowerColor and the Strix ROG GPUs. Now, interestingly enough, the sample that we received came with silent mode enabled out of the box, which was pretty odd, so we had to actually go through the process of reinstalling drivers and then flipping back to performance mode. So if you're someone who's currently rocking the RX 5700 Pulse from Sapphire, just make sure that you're running it in performance mode, because I'm not sure if it's just our sample or if it's you guys, but yeah, something that I thought was worth bringing up. Our final contender for this roundup is the ASUS TUF X3 5700 OC. It's the most expensive 5700 model that we have over here, and out of the box, I'm getting stealth vibes, guys, because I really like it. It's a complete matte black frame with a triple fan layout with a little bit of tough branding that blends in pretty well. It's also a very big and beefy GPU featuring the DirectCU3 design with copper heat pipes. You also get a metal backplate that looks really nice, in my opinion. The I/O remains the same, features a 6-pin 8+ power connector layout, and it's located at a comfortable spot for easier cable management. And there are no signs of RGB lighting, which is nice. It doesn't come with a dual BIOS switch like the Sapphire card, so it's simply a plug-and-play solution, which is nice. Now, having looked at all of these cards from a physical aspect, I guess it's time to get into performance. But before that, let's quickly go over the frequencies of these individual GPUs, because they are factory overclocked out of the box. So here's an overview of the base and game clocks on the 5700 XT GPUs. The ROG Strix model has the highest among the rest, followed by the PowerColor GPU, and then the MSI Evoke OC. It's a welcoming upgrade over the reference model, and from our testing using the performance modes on all GPUs, we were able to sustain the core clocks above the expected game clocks on all 3 graphics cards under our 10-minute game load test. Switching over to the RX 5700, the TUF graphics card takes the edge here, sporting the highest game clock, followed by Sapphire. However, with the TUF GPU, we were only able to sustain an average core clock of 6098 MHz over our 10-minute game load test. But now let's switch over to gaming. And as you can see, the results were on par with our expectations given the price points of these GPUs. The ROG Strix 5700 XT took the lead in every game that we tested, and that's thanks to the higher factory overclock it came with out of the box. That being said, the PowerColor GPU is almost as good as the Strix card, and it performs pretty close to that GPU, and it's $20 cheaper. The MSI Evoke OC does pretty well, and honestly, I have nothing to complain here for the price. The RX 5700s didn't perform as well as I expected them to. The Sapphire and Tough GPUs performed literally the same and zero perceivable improvement versus the stock reference card. If I had to choose one, I'd get the Sapphire card because it's a bit low profile and it costs less than the Tough GPU. We also tested different modes within these graphics cards to see how much you're gaining or losing in terms of frame rates. And as you can see with the ROG Strix 5700 XT, you're not losing that much in terms of performance switching to silent mode. In fact, it still manages to outperform the PowerColor GPU in OC mode. Speaking of the PowerColor GPU, there is a noticeable difference in both modes, and that's obviously due to the power limit, so keep that in mind, and the same story applies to the Sapphire card. Temperatures look pretty respectable. Analyzing the XT batch, the MSI Evoke OC ran the coolest among the rest, but keep in mind that these are the core temps and not VRM or memory readings. And as I mentioned earlier, referring back to Steve's video, the thermal performance on the MSI card for the VRMs and memory weren't the best, and that's due to their poor thermal pad design. So that's something to definitely keep note of. The Strix card ran a bit hotter compared to the PowerColor GPU, but nothing significant, and they're all noticeably better than the reference card from AMD. Switching over to the 5700s, the Sapphire card ran the hottest, followed by the Tough, which was really surprising considering they performed identically. So that was a bit odd, but I think I have an explanation for that, which I'll get into right after this sound test. Mind you guys, these cards were running under full gaming load in the respective performance modes. So when you look at the acoustic performance of these GPUs, specifically with the 5700s, the Sapphire card performs the best, and that was expected considering it ran a bit hotter than the Tough GPU, but that card wasn't too loud either. With the XT models, the ROG Strix GPU was the quietest when compared to MSI's Evoke OC and PowerColor's Red Devil. Finally, here's a quick overview of power consumption. The ROG consumes the most amount of power, followed by PowerColor, and then the Evoke. The Asus Tough 5700 draws almost the same amount of power as the reference model. So that pretty much concludes this roundup, guys, and I want to know your thoughts about which one would you pick, especially in the 5700 XT batch and the 5700. I'm personally leaning towards the ROG GPU because it's the fastest among the rest, but it's also the quietest, or relatively quiet, doesn't run as loud as the PowerColor GPU, but the downside is that it consumes a lot of power. With the 5700, I think I'm leaning towards the Sapphire GPU because it's cheaper than the Tough graphics card. It also performs identically to that GPU as well, but it's not significant compared to the reference graphics card from AMD. I'll definitely make sure to leave links in the description down below for all these GPUs if I find any online, so make sure to check the description if you're interested in any of these. Let me know what you guys think about this roundup in the comments down below. Certainly let me know your pick as well. I'm Eber with hardwarecanucks. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification button when we pump out a new video. I'm signing off, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.